Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we have a lot to get into. I mean, we have some backfields changing, some running backs falling flat on their face. We're going to be talking about one guy in just a second. But before we get into it, make sure you go down there, drop a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you play fantasy football. If you have any questions, make sure you drop them down there in the comment section. And in that comment section, you can find a link to Underdog Fantasy, where on Underdog Fantasy, you can get into weekly best ball drafts with us on the live stream, or you can check out all these player props. And when you use promo code FLOCK, they're going to match your first deposit dollar for dollar up to 100. Our lock of the week last week, Davante Adams more than 78.5 receiving yards. That hit. We'll be talking about Davante Adams later on. My lock for Monday night is going to be James Conner more than 71.5 total yards. I get it. Horrible matchup against the 49ers, but the usage is there. He had almost every single snap out of this backfield a week ago. But you can find a link to Underdog in the description, in the comment section, available in damn near every state. Deposit $10 with promo code FLOCK, and then you'd immediately have 20 in your account. But that should be it. Let's dive into our first back here. Someone that's been on a few sell-high videos for us as of late, Dameon Pierce. Now with Dameon Pierce, I mean, I've already admitted he is a phenomenal talent. With Dameon Pierce, we've talked about it over and over and over again. If he was in a different offense, if he was on the Kansas City Chiefs instead of Isaiah Pacheco, oh my gosh, it would be a completely different story. You'd be jumping up and down. But what has been our issue with Dameon Pierce? What was our issue with someone like D'Onta Foreman this week as well? I mean, pretty much Brian Robinson, so many of these running backs that were on our sell high list. It is very difficult in a full PPR format to be a running back, even if you are a very talented option in a bad offense, which the Houston Texans are, and you don't catch passes. We see that play out with Dameon Pierce here. Where Dameon Pierce, it's not like the talent's any different this week. I mean, obviously, he's a phenomenal running back. Very good matchup against Washington. He plays 43 out of 56 snaps, so he's out there pretty much the entire game. And with Dameon Pierce, 10 carries, 8 rushing yards. Is that his fault or Houston's? It's Houston's. Dameon Pierce can't save his day because he's only getting 2 receptions for 9 receiving yards, which is actually more than we've seen over the past few weeks. So I'm sorry whenever we have to go through and say to sell high on one of these players, and we're a little bit rude about it. I know people hate us for it, blah, blah, blah. But you cannot be a running back that does not catch passes in one of the league's worst offenses. We'll talk about D'Onta Foreman as well later on. But one thing that we learned is Amari Cooper can apparently play on the road. Up until this point, the home away splits for Amari Cooper have been ridiculous. Now, we did say it's mainly a small sample noise, like it's very hard to buy into these over the longer term, but it was very weird with Amari Cooper if you were looking at those home away splits. He's away, he's in Detroit, and you see Amari Cooper, 8 receptions, 113 receiving yards, 2 receiving touchdowns. Donovan Peoples-Jones has himself a day as well. Donovan Peoples-Jones, we took the more than, I believe, 47.5 yards on Underdog this week, 61 yards, 5 receptions, and the receiving touchdown. I mean, if this is what we're getting from the Cleveland Browns this week, I think you can only be more excited about when we get Deshaun Watson back in a few. What we really need to see is the Cleveland Browns get out to very early deficits. And if that would be the case, then we're just going to get that target volume consistently. I mean, Amari had 12 targets this week. And quick side note, David Njoku came back in. I said not to start David Njoku this week, not because you don't like David Njoku, but because you don't want to be playing a tight end coming back first week off an ankle. You have Harrison Bryant with 4 receptions, 41 receiving yards, and 7 targets. I'm not worried about this long term when David Njoku is fully healthy, but very similar to someone we'll talk about later on in DeAndre Swift. The player coming back, probably better to keep them on your bench until we see otherwise. But now going over to Pittsburgh, Najee Harris, buy low running back for us. I mean, coming through 20 carries, 90 rushing yards, 2 rushing touchdowns. Najee Harris also involved as a pass catcher with 6 targets. With Najee, we talked about it 2 weeks ago. Up until that point, he had the toughest running back schedule in the entire NFL. I wasn't even a fan of the guy coming into the season. But we can at least acknowledge the fact that when the entire fantasy football community gives up on you, when you're playing in a horrible offense, that should get better because you have that rookie quarterback in Kenny Pickett that's going to continue to progress, and your matchups are going to get significantly easier. You should be a little more excited about that individual guy. So with Najee Harris, he is still a mid running back too. With Najee Harris, he's still someone that you should be starting every week. I don't want to come out here and tell you that if you drafted him in round 1, everything's going to be okay. That's not going to be the case. But just make sure you don't have this man on your bench. I mean, he should be someone in your starting lineup based off this volume. And then also, George Pickens continues to dominate from an efficiency standpoint. Like, George Pickens only 6 targets, however, crushes everybody in Pittsburgh. 4 receptions, 83 receiving yards, and the receiving touchdown. Frymuth getting a ton of volume. I think you can be excited. Now, going over to Minnesota. I mean, it is the weirdest thing ever. Kirk Cousins is Cinderella at the ball from about noon to 3 p.m. Central. He's Cinderella at the ball, but once we get to 3 p.m., he's running home, losing his slipper, and he turns into a pumpkin. I mean, I don't know what happens. Kirk Cousins, anytime that's not noon, any game that is prime time or somewhat close to prime time, he is just going to embarrass himself, embarrass the Minnesota Vikings. I know it's not just on Cousins. You don't lose 40-3 and it's only on the quarterback. Of course, that's not the case. We're just giving him a hard time, just trying to be funny. 105 passing yards out of 23 passing attempts. Dalvin Cook, I'm surprised to see he comes away with 72 yards and how bad this offense was. Jefferson gives you nothing. I mean, what's surprising is Hawkinson has 9 targets. Oh my gosh, this is the weirdest, and I repeat, weirdest thing ever here. But now going over to Dallas, what's very interesting is we had the report saying Ezekiel Elliott is going to be active, but not 100%. That Tony Pollard will be the starting running back for the Dallas Cowboys. And yes, Pollard sees the majority of snaps. Pollard gets 39 snaps compared to Ezekiel Elliott at 21. Don't look at the Malik Davis usage. The Malik Davis usage has nothing to do with anything other than they won 40-3. So, of course, they're not going to run Tony Pollard or an injured Ezekiel Elliott out there. Now, if we're looking at the stat line, I mean, the usage between Pollard and Zeke is identical with their carries. Pollard continues to be the more efficient running back, as we've always seen. What's frustrating, though, is they're giving Ezekiel Elliott the red zone role, it looks like. Like, you have Ezekiel Elliott, his longest run of the day, only 8 yards, but he comes away with 2 rushing touchdowns. Now, of course, Tony Pollard saves his day with over 100 receiving yards. I mean, multiple receiving touchdowns. Pollard dominating no matter what. Just imagine if they looked at this situation and said, okay, so Tony Pollard has been the more efficient running back for 4 years now. Why don't we just fully unleash Pollard? Why are we still giving these red zone opportunities to Ezekiel Elliott? So I hate to say this, but Tony Pollard, we had him on our sell high video this week, and he's probably going to be on there next week as well because he is clearly an elite talent. As a talent, Tony Pollard is phenomenal, and if he were the starting running back full-time for the Dallas Cowboys and Ezekiel Elliott wasn't involved, Pollard would be a borderline top 5 running back rest of season. But for whatever reason, they still want to get Zeke involved. They still are giving him the red zone role. And the Dallas Cowboys aren't going to be scoring 40 points every week going forward. The most frustrating thing ever. But going over to Las Vegas, we can have a takeaway that even though this is one of the worst teams in the NFL, one of, maybe better than the Denver Broncos here, you can still start Josh Jacobs with confidence. You can still start Davante Adams with confidence. I mean, Davante Adams, 13 targets, obviously a phenomenal day. I know some people were worried about the matchup he had. Some people were worried about him being limited, which is why we're able to get such a good price on that prop this week on Underdog. And with Josh Jacobs, he's the only guy who had a carry out of this backfield. Josh Jacobs didn't have some phenomenal fantasy day because he didn't score a touchdown, but the man sees 4 targets, which is right in line with the receiving down usage he's had previously. 3 receptions, 51 receiving yards, and 109 rushing yards. So Josh Jacobs has, 160 total yards. If we're looking at the snaps here, you have some Amir Abdullah, but it's almost all going to Jacobs. I think you should be very excited about the role. Now, going over to the opposite end of the spectrum, with the Denver Broncos, they go through and, give Latavius Murray the majority of the touches. Latavius Murray sees 17 carries to Melvin Gordon's 8. Latavius Murray at the same time sees 4 receptions. So you kind of want to say, oh, okay, well, Latavius Murray's a starting running back. Should we get excited about him? In reality, no. He's in a 50-50 split backfield with Melvin Gordon. Melvin Gordon actually played 29 snaps compared to Latavius Murray at 32. If you're not being a startable option against the Raiders. I don't know. I think that every Denver Bronco not named Courtland Sutton for the stretch of games you all know Jerry Jeudy is a must bench guy. But now going down to our next team, the Detroit Lions and Jamal Williams will not stop. Like, I know DeAndre Swift still needs to be someone on our bench. We've been admitting that. We've been saying that forever now. I kind of wanted to get excited going, okay, well, maybe this is the week we get DeAndre Swift coming out with the breakout, considering the fact that he practices in full, and then you get the report on Saturday saying he's still dealing with crap, and you're like, oh my, what is this? Then Jamal Williams, 3 rushing touchdowns. Jamal Williams at one point had more touchdowns this season than Davis Mills total. Davis Mills, a starting quarterback that has not missed any time. Jamal Williams had more touchdowns than that man. I don't know what to say. I mean, you have freaking Justin Jackson seeing as many snaps. I mean, more snaps than DeAndre Swift here. You have Justin Jackson seeing more carries. DeAndre Swift is just someone that I still want to say he has the rest of season upside. Obviously, he's still on your bench until we see otherwise. You can't start him until we actually see him on the field with, the lead running back role. Maybe we are wrong about the rest of season upside, though. Maybe he's just not going to get through these injuries, and they have no incentive to make sure that he gets back and that they use him as that lead back when Jamal Williams has been crushing it. But now going over to New York, real quick, just want to say the Giants wide receiver room is cursed. This went from being a room that you thought was going to have a decent amount of names coming into this season. Then obviously you have the Tony fallout. You have Golladay turning into a pumpkin. Now, with Wan'Dale Robinson looking like the wide receiver of the future here, racking up 100 receiving yards early, going down as well. So now you are looking at a wide receiver room that if this past week of snaps is predictive of what we have going forward, will be led off with Darius Slayton, wide receiver 1, Isaiah Hodges, wide receiver 2, Kenny Golladay 3, Richie James 4. Shepard looked great at a point. Tony looked great at a point. Wan'Dale looked great at a point. It's all collapsing for New York. But going over to Carolina, just quick note, like we said, Deontay Foreman, you can't start a running back in a bad offense that doesn't catch passes. We know that. If you're a first and second down back and you're going to be in the league's worst offense, you got to be a sell high guy. It clearly goes from having 31 carries last week to 11 carries, 24 rushing yards. DJ Moore as well gives you absolutely nothing. You can't start anybody in Carolina. Maybe in a better matchup. We know that right when you had Matt Rule fired about a month ago, you had a few games of actual decent production out of these players, but it was just a little small sample pop and nothing predictive. Now going over to Chicago, we are going to have David Montgomery looking like that true bell cow running back. Darrington Evans only sees 2 snaps. Tristan Ebner only sees 7, but Ebner, has a whopping 8 rushing yards. Bravo. Bravo with your 8 rushing yards, my friend. You did great. You get a target out of the backfield. David Montgomery leads the team in receiving. David Montgomery plays 55 out of 69 snaps. David Montgomery has 17 carries, 67 rushing yards. David Montgomery must start back, 3-down player in Chicago. Of course, he's not the running back 1 here because that is Justin Fields, as we've been saying for the past month or so. But, I will be worried about the Justin Fields injury. If you look at the backup wide receiver room right now with Chicago, this would be something we have to track. He was carted off like a shoulder injury after the game. I don't know what this is about. We will get news, I'm sure, on Monday and on Tuesday. Now going over to Atlanta, Cordell Patterson, someone that I still want to root for, is still playing in a running back by committee. Very frustrating. Tyler Algier, 30 snaps. Cordell Patterson, 27. Caleb Huntley gets removed from this offense, so it goes from being a 3-4-man running back by committee to now it's only a 2-man RB by committee, which is nice. But going back to what we've been saying all video now, the Atlanta Falcons are a bad offense, one of the worst offenses in the NFL. Cordell Patterson can catch the ball, but he hasn't been used that way because they don't throw it. So we can't be starting running backs that are not catching the ball in some of the league's worst offenses in the NFL. It sucks. I'm really hoping they change the usage with Cordell Patterson. I have him on so many teams. So frustrating. Now, going over to Philadelphia, Devonta Smith, A.J. Brown are just going to get every single target. And I repeat, every single target with no Dallas Goedert here. Now, of course, we have, Quez Watkins coming away with the lone receiving touchdown. So maybe you're not going to see it in the fantasy points. But if you're looking underneath, you had 16 targets from these two wide receivers compared to a whopping 25 passing attempts for Jalen Hurts. 16 targets between these two wide receivers. Devonta Smith, must-start guy. I know he didn't really pop for us because he didn't score the touchdown, but if the touchdown's going to be there, Smith will be elite. Now, going over to the Jets, yes, they can't play against Bill Belichick. We've known this. Everybody should have known this. Everybody has known this. Zach Wilson, 22 passing attempts, 77 passing yards, total of 59 rushing yards in the offense. The Jets cannot beat Bill Belichick. They can't move the ball down the field effectively. At least Zach Wilson didn't throw 4 interceptions. But going over to the New England side of things, Damian Harris gets the start. So that's nice. And we have been saying to sell Ramondre Stevenson high before Damian Harris comes back. But in reality, it doesn't matter. You have a whopping 49 snaps for Ramondre Stevenson, 15 snaps for Damian Harris. So it doesn't matter if he's starting. It was a good game environment as well. Like we said, the Jets weren't able to effectively move the ball down the field, so it's not like New England was playing from behind. Ramondre Stevenson still sees 6 receptions, 56 receiving yards. The man just leads New England in receiving week in and week out. So, it has been great if you're a Ramondre Stevenson owner, and I think you should be very excited. But I think that's all I got for you. Of course, thank you so much for checking out the video. If you enjoyed it, go down there, drop a like, subscribe to the channel if you play fantasy football. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them down there in the comment section. And in the comment section, you can find that link to Underdog Fantasy, available in damn near every state. With that link, you can check out all these cool player props, get into drafts with us on the live stream. When you sign up with promo code FLOCK, they're going to match your first deposit dollar for dollar up to $100. I like betting on James Conner tomorrow night, even in a tough matchup, just given the workload. But thank you again. I appreciate you. I hope you have a great day, and I hope we get to see you in the live stream tonight.